and welcome to Hot Off the List. I'm Mr. Jonathan, and I'm here with Miss Michelle and our special guest for today. Gillian Goerz is an artist living in Toronto. She works in illustration, graphic recording, cartooning, writing, and brush lettering. Today, we're talking about the first book of her middle grade graphic novel series, Shirley and Jamila Save Their Summer. Jamila seems doomed to waste her summer at science camp when she'd rather be playing basketball. Luckily, Shirley, a girl she barely knows, convinces her mother to let them spend their summer together. But if Jamila thinks this summer is going to be all basketball and relaxation, she's in for a surprise when Shirley reveals that she is a kid detective and they have a case to solve. Hi, Gillian. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, Michelle, you kick it off.
I sure will. Thanks. So, congratulations. Shirley and Jamila is on the Florida Sunshine State Young Reader Award list for the 3 through 5s. And what does that feel like when you find out that your book has been named to an award list that is going to be picked by the students of Florida?
It's the best feeling in the world. I wrote and published both of my books primarily in pandemic. So it's like I've been really shut out from the world of being an author. It actually feels a little bit unreal still. Only just in the last even 3 months have I been in person at all or like engaging a lot with actual readers and kids. So it's been such a treat. It feels surreal and it sort of starts to make the whole thing feel like it actually happened. Like I see I have these artifacts here. There's some books here. I don't know how they got here. But yeah, it's so special. It feels like I've been working in a bubble, and it nicely breaks the bubble to be like, oh, people are reading the book, and the fact that they like it or it's getting any acknowledgement is amazing and incredible.
Well, we're glad to give it some attention.
I'm glad for that too. Thank you.
Absolutely. So Jamila is surprised to learn that Shirley is super smart about some topics, but knows very little about others. Sometimes things that Jamila thinks are obvious. I'm wondering, was this characteristic inspired by anything or anyone specific?
Well, yes, the book is very loosely based on Sherlock Holmes books. The Shirley Bones Sherlock Holmes is not a coincidence. And I really love the Sherlock Holmes books. However, they've got a lot of inherent problems. They're pretty racist, they're pretty sexist, and they're very much emblematic of their time. They're at a strange adult level. And I love classic literature, but it does carry with it the baggage of its day. So I really wanted to bring the fun and the thrill of the mystery solving and the excitement of, these two characters who both have something to teach one another and bring that into a present day scenario and overwrite some of the less than awesome stuff in it. So Sherlock is part of the puzzle, but I think that we can all relate to the idea of having strengths and weaknesses. I do a lot of crossword puzzles and I am terrible at geography and I'm not at all good at any like history, but I'm great at pop culture and I know a lot of literature. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And I think this is something that everybody looks for in their friendships and relationships, is to find somebody who can complement you. And that can mean you find it harder to connect because you don't always necessarily share the same reference points. But when you can find the ways those pieces fit together, you can really make a killer combo.
I love that. Thank you.
So obviously, Shirley's a kid detective. So were you a fan? Oh, you already said you liked Sherlock Holmes, but were you a fan of any other detective stories like Harriet the Spy or the Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew or even Encyclopedia Brown? Any of those?
Harriet the Spy is the big one. I never actually did read Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys growing up, but Harriet the Spy was a huge one for me. I also really loved the Anastasia Krupnik books, which are by, I think Lois Lowry wrote those. And the Anastasia Krupnik character is also, while she's not a detective per se, she's a bit of a methodical problem solver. And I really appreciated the way that she made a lot of lists and was always journaling and wants to be a journalist and a writer. So, that same journalists, writers, detectives, there's a lot of the same methodology that comes into those careers where it's like, I got to ask the right questions. I got to talk to a lot of people. And what I find will maybe just solve the mystery of the story, or maybe it'll solve a bigger mystery. So yeah, Harriet the Spy is huge for me. I love that book. Everyone should read it. Everyone should run out and read it.
So Shirley is a keen observer of other people. And I'm wondering, would you say the same about you since you're an artist? You have that same gift.
Yeah, I mean, writers, detectives, and artists too, I would say, have to learn how to not look and see. That's sort of a Sherlock Holmes trope, is that you might have looked, but you didn't see. And there is the idea of not just perceiving what's around you, but really perceiving it. And, do you know how many stairs you walked up when you came up the stairs? I don't. I just saw that it was stairs. Or like you look at the clouds and you see that they're white and blue, but also there's all these other colors. So being able to hone your ability to perceive and observe is a big part of being an artist, but also part of being a writer. And I think that that's where often illustrators become good graphic novelists and vice versa. If you have the ability to draw and do that kind of thing, then writing the story is kind of inherent, because you're already telling a story with pictures. So adding the words is sort of a bit of a natural layer. I was nervous about having to be the writer, but I think it went okay.
Absolutely.
It went great. So we know that part of the inspiration is obviously Sherlock Holmes and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And you already referenced this a little bit, but how do you feel we can best appreciate classic literature when it does have, or sometimes can have, those implicit biases that we now know are troubling?
That's a great question. I think that being a detective is actually the answer to that, because asking a lot of questions and being consistently observant and questioning is the thing that all people should bring to the reading that they do, as opposed to just an assumption that what you're reading is true. Read it with that discerning detective's eye, where you're asking questions, you're double checking, you're getting second sources, and you're finding out if what you're reading is true, rather than just assuming that you're being fed the truth.
That's great advice.
That's great.
Are there any specific artists that made you want to become an illustrator, or that greatly influenced your style?
Oh, that's a hard question. I mean, children's books have always been a huge source of inspiration for me. So growing up, a lot of like kids' picture books, the illustrations that came in the chapter books I was reading, the Ramona books, the Beverly Cleary illustrations, the ones that were there when I was a kid, were really formative, because there's such a great, sketchy, energetic line movement in them. Quentin Blake is a huge influence. He's the primary illustrator of most Roald Dahl books. And that kind of loose style. Modern illustrators, I mean, I don't think there's anyone better than Gillian Tamaki. She's just like a maestro of the craft of illustration and storytelling. And then, of course, her own writing is, of course, brilliant and challenging and magical. But yeah, it's finding your own style is tough. It's a matter of just continuing to make things until it feels like it's you. I often could tell if I don't like it, it isn't me. I haven't got there yet. And I really learned to draw a lot from tracing and from imitating the styles of others. And I think that's really natural, but that's step one of like a 7-step process, or an infinite step process that lasts you your whole life. So if there's young artists out there, copying Archie like I did, don't worry about it, but let it develop and morph and move away from Archie, or move away from Marvel, or move away from whatever your favorite comic fan is, because you're going to land on what feels like you in the end. And that is going to keep changing. So
I love that. And actually, it's a really great segue into our game. So Michelle has never seen these clues before either, but because in addition to being an author, you are also our cartoonist, today we're going to play a game called First Draft. And so I will show you both an artist's early version of a beloved comic book character, and it's your job to tell us the character's name or the comic strip title. If you get there, we'll take it. We're not keeping score. There are 5 clues. I'm going to share my screen over here.
But is it possible for me to win, is what I'm asking.
Well, Michelle is also very competitive. So. All right, here we go. I'll share my screen. Oh, I think, here we go. Aha. Can you see this cartoon?
This is Garfield.
Garfield.
Okay. Excellent. This is indeed Jim Davis's Garfield. Okay, clue number 2.
Oh, how fun.
Charlie
Peanuts.
Oh, yes, you're both right. I thought maybe that one would stump you, because this one I think looks considerably different. All right.
Oh, go ahead.
Indeed. No, you share, please. We didn't ask you for an interview.
I have some very early Peanuts compilations, so I'm familiar with that early, where they look more like babies. Their heads, their faces take up so much less of the head.
So cool.
Love it.
Awesome.
Indeed. This is Charles Schulz, Peanuts comic strip. Okay, clue number 3.
Dennis the Menace.
Yes, that's
Dennis the
exactly who
Menace,
that is.
yes.
Yes.
This one, I thought he still looks pretty close to the
Mhm.
first iteration. So, okay, clue number 4. This one is a bit of a cheat because this is not actually the first draft. Because
Popeye.
yes, because the first draft looks remarkably similar to what the final result is. This is the bartender who inspired E.C. Seeger to draw Popeye.
That's wonderful.
All right, last one.
Betty Boop.
Betty
Boop.
Boop. This is Max Fleischer's first iteration of Betty Boop.
Too cute.
Ah,
So
excellent. I
cute.
made it too easy this time.
Those are good, though. Those were fun.
Those are fun.
Well, thank
I
you
also
so
just
much.
have to say, I would be remiss in not mentioning Calvin and Hobbes as maybe the penultimate comic inspiration for writing and drawing. It's got to be in there. Just had to sneak it in.
Great suggestion. Great suggestion. So this book actually has a sequel. Can you tell us about the sequel?
Well, yes, I can. Thank you for asking. It's called Shirley and Jamila's Big Fall. And it really actually doesn't matter what order you read them in, but technically this one picks up more or less where the other one left off, except it's back to school time. So Jamila's going to be starting at a new school because, as we know, she's just moved to the neighborhood, but it's a little easier for her because Shirley's there to help out. And the story focuses on a couple things. First, there's a big case in which a bully is kind of extorting people. And if you don't know the word extorting, it means like blackmailing, like holding mean stories or like things, secrets that people don't want out, and forcing them to give you something in return for their silence. And so they need to try and contend with this massive bully. But also at the same time, Jamila's made a new friend, and her name is Sina, and she sort of doesn't think that Sina and Shirley are going to get along. So there's an overarching story of, can you have friends that don't get along with one another? Can you have friends that are quite different from each other? And what do you bring to each of these different friendships? So if Shirley and Jamila Save Their Summer is sort of like how to make a friend, this is sort of like intermediate friendship. Now you've got a friend. How do you get more, and how do you keep them, and what does that look like? So
What a fun topic to explore, because I feel like friendships can be so complicated. And as a kid, it's easy to see it as black and white. Someone is a friend or they're not your friend. And you can make hard choices that you don't necessarily need to make because you don't understand the nuances when you're growing up.
100%. And you're going to move in and out of friendships for your whole life. And someone might be super important to you for a season of your life and then not be as important coming forward. And that can be a real grief and a sadness. And it can be a natural thing. So, just having to communicate and actually being able to talk to your friends honestly and authentically is going to make a huge difference with that. And that's a piece of this story, is that being vulnerable and open and sharing who you are with your friends can really pay off. And sometimes you might share something with somebody who doesn't treat that with respect. And that's something that you also have to learn when you're growing up, is who to trust. So
Well, fantastic. I can't wait to read it.
thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. For all of our librarians or teachers or kids that are watching right now, if you haven't read Shirley and Jamila Save Their Summer by Gillian Goerz, it is such a fun read. It has two really strong girl characters. It has a mystery at its heart, and it tells you all about friendship. So I can't recommend highly enough. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a delight. And I just need it said for the record, I'm pretty sure I won that game.
I think so too. We're going to end it right there. Michelle lost. Bye.